what does it cost? If you charge about 180, we know that, I used to work with DTI, and we know that on average, labs will make about a 15% profit after paying yourself a decent wage, which means there should be some money left over in the lab if you're a pretty astute businessman at the end of the year. 15%, that's not a lot. A lot of businesses. So if we take labor for a crown at $180, and 15% of that is $27. The cost of a remake will it'll take you 7 crowns in order to make up for that remake. So it's a real process, a real money eater, having to redo shades. Anybody? Approximately 4 millimeters. And how much prep do they give you? Say an average PFM, 1.5 millimeters for alloy. So if they use 0.5 in metal, 0.2 in paste opaques, you've got 0.8 left to match a 4 millimeter shade tab. Okay, you guys are magicians. Every day of your lives, you're executing shades that are very, very good. You need to pat yourselves on the back. It's not an easy task, and that's why we run up against problems periodically. The first tool that we use most often in taking shade is one of the ones that we have the biggest problem with. Our eyes. What happens with our eyes? Well, guess what? As we get older, the lens yellows, and what happens is the shorter wavelengths, the fluid between the lens and the retina becomes more light, absorbs more light, so it changes our perception of value. Value, we know, is the most important aspect of shade. So as we get older, we see the shades differently. We also know that there's that 9% of people, men in particular, so obviously there's lots of tricks. So in a lifetime, many of us, it takes us half our lifetimes to ace some of those tricks. And needless to say, it's a real challenge. One of the things you'll see is that this is a natural tooth. This is a tooth made with modern day porcelain. You see that the full light reflection is similar to the natural tooth. That's what we're trying to mimic. I've got a 4-unit bridge here, which does not fluoresce, which does not do that. Okay? There's good and there's bad porcelains. Things have changed in materials up there. I would not want that up here in my anterior. Why? Because as I walk down the street, they would look gray. And we've all seen people on the street that have their teeth look a little odd in different lights. We're trying to mimic natural teeth with the materials that we use. That in itself is a challenge, but you've got to start with good materials that allow you to do that. You have light coming in one way, looks like it's kind of opaque-ish, bluish, and looking at it from the other side, it actually looks orange. Natural teeth undergo an opalescence in their effect. So, again, materials are important. The lights, I think you've all heard about correct lighting in 5,500 degrees Kelvin, but the challenge we have is getting it. Okay? I saw a slide from Ed McLaren's program where he showed 3 full spectrum lamps in the same slide, getting 3 totally different light spectrums. So just because you go to Home Depot and it says daylight or full spectrum, doesn't mean it is 5,500 degrees Kelvin. Okay? We also know that the tubes change over time with dust and with age. Okay? In addition to that, we know that just because you put them in the ceiling doesn't mean you have enough light to take a good shade. It takes 150 to 200 foot candles to actually have a good shade at the point of taking that shade tab to the mouth. And if you're not sure what that means, you can. There's guys with the light meters that can check that when they're first installed. A good lighting company can check that for you. We know the eyes have some imperfections, but the eye is what we use to take shade. So we have 2 types of receptors in those eyes. We have rods and cones. Rods perceive black and white. Cones perceive color. Which we have more of? Yes? Anybody? I should be throwing dollar bills, dollar coins, toonies. We have 25 to 27 times more rods than cones. That's the reason why you want to use a value-based shade pack. Because black and white is what we're most perceptive to. Even if you get the right color in the crown, if the brightness is wrong, the shade fails, or has a higher likelihood of failing. Okay? And that's why everybody's talking value-based. It's brightness based on the rods, because we're human, and that's what we're more perceptive to, is that brightness. We also know that the colors, the cones, are better when we look straight on. If on the periphery of your vision, color is not as good as it is straight on. One of the things that we actually tell people to do is you can squint when you're taking shade. What does that do? It knocks out, it takes those cones out of kilter, so to some degree, and you get actually a better perception of brightness or value. Okay, so that's why people are recommended to squint. We also know too, it only takes 10 seconds for these rods, because they're receptors, to tire. So if I hold up the shade tab and I'm looking in, 30 seconds later, I'm starting to double guess myself. There's good reason for that. The rods are tired. Okay, and actually different shade tabs actually look better after 30 seconds than in the first 5 to 10 seconds. And you can see we've got to use everything we can to try and improve our communication to reduce likelihood of error. Why? Because it costs us money to do it. Munzel's the one that came up with the value chroma hue concept. You've probably heard this all before. From the top to the bottom, black to white is what? Value, right? And it's number one for importance because of the rods. Number two is intensity. Going from the inside to the outside of the sphere of shade. And that's what we call chroma. So like taking a glass of red wine and diluting it down 50-50 in subsequent glasses. What color is it? It's still all burgundy, but it's getting lighter. And that's the danger we have. Is make my crown a little lighter. You don't know if it's a chroma change you want or a value change. The last aspect, of course, is hue, the least important, and that's the actual color in the crown. And we're only worried about a little bit of lemon to a little bit of red. Okay. If you get the value in the chroma right, you can actually forget about the hue and still get a pretty good shade. So there's the Munzel's sphere. Back in the 1990s, Vita used earlier versions of our easy shade to spectrophotomically read people's teeth. So instead of taking, A3 as a shade, they would take an actual numerical value for a value, chroma, and hue and map those people, 5,000 people around the world. And that's what this banana is here, 5,000 people. There were 1,000 measurable shades, but only 100 distinguishable shades. Okay, so they could have come out with a shade guide with 100 tabs, and that would have been the full spectrum of choice. Problem is, we came out with a 3D shade guide with 26 tabs, and already we lost probably 30 to 50% of people are not comfortable using that. Most of the technicians are, but we'd say most of the dentists and their staff are not comfortable. Imagine if we come out with a 100 shade tab shade guide, we would have been really in big trouble. For people that aren't fortunate enough to get lunch and learns and things like that, and I do about 40 to 50 lunch and learns with dentists. I don't see dentists other than at the convention or lunch and learns. And so a lot of dentists don't get education like they should. There is a new shade guide out called the linear guide. And it looks like this. Basically, it is the 3D shade guide in a different layout. Okay? There's nothing new. It has actually the same tabs as the 3D shade guide, just in a different layout. And so when you open it up, it's a nice metal box. Opens up, and on the top there's a nice gray shade wafer. And you pull that out, it's a dark gray, and this is 6 value groups. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're picking somebody's value in their teeth. Now, normally these tabs should be tip to tip. Well, when taking shade, we're actually better as human have a major impact on shades and the tools that we use. So I would recommend you use all the tools you have available to you. Okay. Little nuances. If you're really keen and you're looking for matching specific things, of course, you can have your dentist buy modifier wheels. Give you little specific. You've seen the Gerard Ubasi book. I hope some of you have seen it. It's an atlas of photos. So, let's talk a little bit about electronic shade taking. Vita's now had their Easy Shade on the market for about 6 years. There's X-Rite, there's about 8 other different machines out there. One of the things these do is they eliminate the issue of light and the issue of aging eyes. Okay, but these machines are not perfect. They're tools to use to an end. Okay, so the way to look at it. The technology has basically been taken from other industries like paint and what. There are 4 different aspects of it. You can do a tooth single or cervical, middle, and incisal. The other options are a shade tab or a restoration verify mode. And the restoration verify mode is kind of an interesting aspect. I'll show you how the software we've developed to work with that. But it's very important when you're taking a spectrophotometric reading of a crown that you don't hold it with your tissue behind it, or that you don't have, if it's a metal-free crown, that you don't have tongs up inside it, because it'll pick up those things and give you shades that are affected by that. So I quite often hold it right between the fingers to take the shade. Things you learn in the process. It'll give you classic shades and 3D shades, but as I mentioned, it'll give you the best of the classic, but at 81 versions of 3D, so it'll give you a more range in the 3D. And now, in the crown check mode, in this case, it's supposed to be a 2M1, and it'll give you 1 star or 2 stars or 3 stars. 3 stars means good match. 2 stars means fair, and 1 star means adjust, not happy. But in addition to the fact that this is a fair match, it's giving you the L, C, and H. The L is for lightness or value, chroma, and hue. So it tells you how far it is off. It's telling you that the value is low on this crown to be a 2M1. The chroma is actually pretty darn close. The hue is not that bad, really, because these are the 2 things you're gonna worry about fixing the most. Okay. So as a technician, what would you do to fix that? Well, if you know that the value is low, you can use a brownish-like stain and darken that up. Okay. But the technology that we've done, we've actually got a software package. What this is trying to show you is in decreasing value, if you have an L shade, like a 2L1.5, you would use this well, which is a combination of 12 and 17 mixed 1:1. And if it were an M shade, you would use a 17 to decrease the value. So all 3 of these will decrease value. But what happens if you use this green one on an L shade? You'll decrease the value, but you'll probably interfere with chroma or hue. So what we're trying to do is 3-dimensionally in color space give you a better indication of where to go with the actual stains. Now most of us are using things kind of like this. So this is to increase chroma in a 1M1, a 1M2, and a 2LMNR, and a 3LMNR. So it gives you some guidelines. Obviously, if you used this on a 1M1 to change the chroma, it's so dark it's going to change the value. Make sense? I mean, a lot of you are probably doing that mentally, but this is trying to help those that need some help going to the next step. We also have gone one step further. I showed you on the crown check mode that it gives you a bar of value, chroma, and hue. Okay? The software package that we've developed is called Quality Control Manager. So you can use the Easy Shade to check a shade coming into the lab, but you can check the crown going out, and what it'll do is it'll actually tell you which accent stains to use and which ratios to fix the shade. So rather than just give you the bars and say, okay, fix it, it's actually going the next step and giving the mixture. So the advantage over that previous slide is rather than just taking the well as it is, it's giving you combinations of stains. Right. Bang on 2 o'clock. Any questions?